Right, good morning everybody. This is a meeting of South Cambridgeshire Cabinet. Welcome to everybody joining in the chamber and anybody joining online. My name's Bridget Smith, I'm the leader of the council. My vice chair, Brian Mills, is beside me. Most decisions in Cabinet are taken consensually, but I will, on each item on which there's a vote, ask how people are voting. I'll take questions from Cabinet initially, then anybody else present in the chamber, and then anybody joining us online in that order. So if our officers could let me know if there's anybody online indicating. So it's a reasonably short agenda, but that doesn't mean it'll be a short meeting. Right, we're going to start off with apologies for absence. Do we have any?
Thank you, Chair. No, there are no apologies today.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest to declare in relation to any items of business on today's agenda? Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Leader. East West Rail, the selected alignment goes through my ward. I've been at several meetings with East West Rail, but obviously I discuss it as much objective as I can.
Thank you, and we're happy with that as a declaration of interest. Okay, that's fine. Righty-ho, minutes of previous meeting. I'm happy to move the approval of those minutes as a correct record, and I think Councillor Mills probably second them. Are there any issues arising from the minutes, please? No? So do members agree to approve the minutes? Agreed. Wake up, everybody. Do members agree to approve the minutes?
Agreed.
Oh, sorry, did you have an issue, Councillor Hawkins?
I was not at the meeting.
Oh, so that's fine. Okay. All right. Anyone wish to vote against? Anyone wish to abstain? So Cabinet therefore agrees to the approval of the minutes as a correct record by affirmation. Moving on to item 4, announcements. I don't have any announcements today. Does nobody else does? No? Okay. Right, public questions. We've got 4 public questions received. Mr. Daniel Fulton is the first one and he's appearing online, and the other 3 people who've submitted questions aren't able to attend either remotely or in person, so we will send written responses to them which will appear in our minutes. So, Mr. Fulton, over to you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair. Has any member of the Cabinet or any committee of this Council ever provided any formal oversight for the Council's role in the Community Safety Partnership? And if so, is the Deputy Leader satisfied that the oversight in question was sufficient?
Thank you, Mr. Fulton. I'll take the question if I may. So we do have oversight of the CSP plan, and Councillor Henry Batchelor, who's present, is our lead Cabinet member for communities, and he's the portfolio holder for this work. So we are represented on the CSP board by 2 elected members and a member of the council officers' leadership team. It's actually the head of housing, so we're represented at quite a senior level there. Do you have a supplementary question that's pertinent to your original question, please?
Yes, I do. Under Section 6 of the Crime and Disorder Act 1998, responsible authorities are tasked with formulating and implementing strategies for reducing crime in the local area, combating the misuse of drugs, reducing reoffending, and reducing instances of serious violence in the area. Neither the Community Safety Partnership nor the District Council have any lawful authority to perform policing functions or to engage in intelligence gathering operations targeting individual citizens. A local resident has recently provided a considerable volume of documents showing that council officers involved in the CSP have habitually misused individuals' private information and personal data without any lawful authority, have engaged in unlawful intelligence gathering operations targeting individual citizens, and have performed policing functions without any lawful
Mr.
authority
Fulton,
to do so.
I'm sorry, I'm going
Would
to
the
have
leader,
to,
I'm sorry, I'm getting to
have to stop you there, I'm afraid.
No, I'm going to ask my question now.
And
I have
Mr.
one
Fulton,
sentence
you
question.
know that, you cannot in Cabinet or Council raise issues about the competence and performance of councillors or officers
That's
or
not the point.
refer
You
to
haven't even
matters
heard the
which
question
may
yet.
be the subject of legal proceedings. And you know this, and you just make.
Councillor Smith, you haven't even heard
I'm
the
very sorry
question.
to shut you down, but I'm not prepared
No,
to
you
allow you to
absolutely cannot.
continue with
Would
the
the leader
line
of the
of
council be
questioning at the
willing to
moment.
meet
And I'm
with
going to
me and
ask
the
my
affected
officers
individual
to.
to review the documents in
No,
question
Mr.
and to
Fulton,
consider whether further
Mr.
oversight is
Fulton, you
necessary
are
in
in
order to
breach
protect the
of what
privacy
is
and civil
allowed
liberties
through
of
our
residents
questioning
of South
procedures.
Cambridgeshire?
And you've done this before, so I'm sorry not to be able to accept your
What you're doing
supplementary
is
question.
completely unlawful,
But I
Councillor
thank you
Smith.
for
This is
submitting
censorship,
your
plain
original
and
question. Yes, please.
simple.
Thank you, Mr. Fulton. That's going to have to be the end of that. Thank you. Right, moving on. So the other three questions that have been submitted will be answered in writing. So thank you very much indeed. So moving on to item 6, which is the East-West Rail Development Consent Order, the non-statutory consultation update and draft response to the consultation. And Councillor Milnes is going to introduce this, and I'm very happy to second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the East-West Rail informal consultation process closes on the 24th of this month, and we have composed a response to that consultation exercise, and we have specifically tried to include as many of the diverse opinions from our district wards and parishes. It's a very comprehensive report that I'm happy to recommend to Cabinet. There are still incoming conversations going on just over the last few days. I've, for example, been to a parish meeting at Harston, which is one of the villages that is most impacted by this without any gain. There's going to be a lot of pain during a construction process. There's going to be a lot of disruption. There's going to be disconnection between the villages. So Harston and Newton have just had their primary school join an academy, but during the building construction process of East-West Rail, those two villages are at risk of being disconnected. So naturally this is of concern. And this concern goes the whole length of the East-West Rail project across our district. We have Stephen Kelly here, we have Rachel Lambert, who are officers responsible for constructing this response, which I'm happy to open to questions from anybody that wants to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm happy to second this. Myself and Stephen Kelly attended a meeting at the invitation of a large number of the parish councils before Christmas. I thank them for arranging that. Thank you. Yes, so I thank all those villages, for inviting myself and Stephen Kelly. It was a really productive, really useful meeting, and I know that Mr. Kelly took as a result of that to make sure that our continued engagement with all of the parish councils is of the highest calibre, and that we take every opportunity to represent their concerns. It was really interesting to hear evidence from elsewhere about the disruption during the construction phase, and I think people are rightly very, very concerned about that, because this isn't going to be a matter of months. This is going to be a matter of a considerable number of years, and it will impact on the people's quality of life. So I hope that representatives from those villages are reassured that we are doing our very best to make sure that we are representing them, but of course it's equally important that they continue to make representations themselves on a regular basis, and do so very robustly, both in this build-up to construction starting, but also during the actual construction phase. So are there questions from Cabinet members? I can see I've got Councillor Atkins online, but I'm going to take Cabinet members first. Councillor Hawkins.
Right, thank you, Leader. Not question really, but statement if I may. I just want to say thank you to officers for, putting this report together. There's a lot to be said about this project, both good and bad. Mostly bad, from what I've heard. And of course, as I said before, my village of Caldicot is one of those affected. And some of us as elected members are actually getting abused online. I've been told to grow a backbone and, object to this and that and the other, when all I'm doing is providing information that East West Rail has provided. And I think we're, we just need to be sure that, and as you know, is in the report, the concerns that residents have raised is being addressed. Unfortunately, East West Rail, in my view, has been frugal with the truth. Their dealings with local communities leaves a lot to be desired. A lot of the time I have attended meetings and they say a lot of words, but there's hardly any real information in it. And communities feel they are being ignored. Now, there are 3 areas of concern that I want to note and emphasize. The route alignment. There is a big concern that the idea of the route that goes and connects with Bar Hill and Mosto and then comes down through to Cambridge North has not seriously been considered, was not properly considered. And this has been made worse, especially with the in-person events that have happened for this non-start consultation, where East West Rail staff have admitted to community members that that route will be better, will be cheaper, but they cannot consider it now because of all the work that they have done to take alignment 1 to this stage. Now, that to me says a lot. And I am asking us to request the new East West Rail CEO, David Hughes, to take this matter very seriously. They need to be, I think, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but there's a lot that could still happen. The fact that their staff is saying one thing, they are saying something else, needs to be considered. I'm sorry, but it does. Last mile connectivity. If I got £1 every time I mention this at a meeting I have attended, I don't know how much I'd have, but it'll be a lot. There are many villages being affected negatively, very badly, who are not near enough, who have no connections to each other, let alone to the proposed north of Camborne new station. And yet, the documentation we've seen for this statutory non-start consultation doesn't have anything on that. What the heck? What's going on? The same thing with the harm to the communities. I have asked several times, how are you going to mitigate the harm? What are the benefits that you're going to provide to these communities? And Mr. Will Gallagher keeps saying, we're working on it. How many years have they had to work on it? Nothing. Nothing is coming out. I'm afraid, this just can't carry on as it is. They need to be more upfront with us. They need to actually talk properly and do the things we're asking them to do rather than ignoring our communities who have been affected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mills, do you want to respond to that?
So, thank you for the contribution, and I think I recognise much of what you are saying. As well as my role here, I am a county councillor for the Shelfords and Sawston division, which is largely impacted. It's the route through which the proposed route carries through. And although the response that we've had, and Councillor Smith talks about the meeting that she did with many of the parishes in that area, there has been a varying response from those parishes from a relatively benign objection to outright hostility. This is not something that is news to me to hear. Unfortunately, there is a mix of misinformation, and I've got to say the performance of East West Rail at their community events has been variable, to say the best. And I've been unhappy with some of the responses that I've heard to that. So I think there is a case for asking David Hughes to review their performance in this matter. However, it's currently in an informal consultation phase. We are going to take all those negative comments as well as more positive aspects of this, and we're going to present those to through that consultation process. So I'm more than happy to hear your commentary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Leader. I have to agree with Councillor Hawkins. First of all, I will be supporting the recommendation, but I have to use this opportunity to criticise East West Rail in the way that they have conducted themselves during this consultation. One thing to have meetings and briefings and plans in public meetings, but actually it's what you say in those meetings that's important. And unfortunately, EWR has been very economical with the truth, and we have had to drag out of EWR the facts. For example, people wouldn't think that my ward, Fenditton and Fulbourn, is affected by East West Rail because the attention's all been, and rightly, to the west of Cambridge. That's where the major works is intended. But nevertheless, in my ward is affected, but you wouldn't know that from the consultation documents. Even the technical summary doesn't highlight the fact that the red line goes beyond Cambridge Station, beyond Cherry Hinton, into Fulbourn, where there is due to be a telecoms compound, for example. No indication how that telecoms compound will be accessed. No indication why local residents in Fulbourn have been sent letters by EWR as to why, because if you look at the consultation, you think, well, the turnaround siding stops in the city. It stops to the west of Cherry Hinton High Street. But actually, if you look on the plans, it goes beyond that. And then you discover, when you ask them, that it's to do with the electricity connection between that turnaround siding and the substation at Fulbourn. But none of that is in the consultation. So, I like Councillor Hawkins, I'm rather frustrated by the secrecy and the lack of transparency by EWR as to exactly what they are proposing to do. And I feel I'm very pleased that we are going to ask the Chief Exec to look at the way that they've been conducting themselves, because it is just not satisfactory. As I say, they are very economical with the truth. They're not very transparent. And, okay, this is informal consultation. Well, I hope they greatly improve their performance when they actually get round to the formal consultation, because at the moment it is just not acceptable what they are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And I don't think it'll be the first time that the Chief Exec has heard criticism both from statutory and non-statutory consultees about the quality of the engagement thus far. Do you want to come in, or shall I go to some more questions?
Well, there's just one issue that came up from local members who aren't here to mention it, but we did hear mention of door-to-door services that figure strongly in the consultation exercise. But here in Camborne, there's no clarity about how people from West Camborne or South Camborne would get to a station on the other side of the A428. So that's just another example where there's a deficiency in information coming forward out of this consultation process.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you very much, Leader. I just wanted to start by saying, obviously, that there's a lot of technical detail in this report, and I would certainly thank officers for the work that they've done on that. And I think officers raised some good points, particularly, just from my patch. I was glad to see reference to the kilometre-long bridge over the line between Newton and Harston. It does seem ridiculous to have a railway bridge, which is a kilometre, 400 metres, 200 metres, 400 metres, just across a railway. So certainly thank officers for the technical details. I was glad to see many of the points that residents have made in that submission in Annex B. More generally, though, can I just encourage the Cabinet, but I think this might be hearing Cabinet members really encouraging the leadership of the Cabinet to take a much stronger line on this. We've heard contributions from Cabinet members setting up very clearly the problems with this proposal and the unacceptable engagement that we've had from East West Rail, the refusal to look properly at the northern route being key amongst them, as Councillor Hawkins has just said. But this report that's before Cabinet only asks the Cabinet to note very technical submissions to East West Rail. Now, in paragraph 23 of the report, one of the things officers have listed as being a concern of parish councils is that this council's position might not reflect appropriately the concerns of residents. This Cabinet can show leadership, or the leadership of this council can show leadership by saying, no, this is not acceptable. This report and this submission does not say that. It is just very technical. And I think that's particularly important because we have things like what we saw on the 9th of January this year, where there's a letter which is signed by the leader, although I note quite sensibly not signed by Pippa Halings, which calls for East West Rail to be accelerated. So I think residents are confused that on the one hand we have statements from the leader calling for East West Rail to be accelerated, but then some concerns expressed about some technical points, but no overall position. So can I urge the leadership, I think it is, of the council, to show leadership and to say, no, this is not an acceptable proposal. This council does not accept it, because even though we don't decide this, as the leadership of this district, you have enormous influence. And I think that influence could be used much, much better and much more clearly than it currently is being. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I'm going to bring in Councillor Mills.
Yeah, I think the accusation that we aren't showing leadership in this is inaccurate. We have taken a very strong position with East West Rail over various aspects of this proposal, including, for example, the electrification, which for a long time was not guaranteed in the proposal and which now has been restored. There has been a lot of representation from this council to East West Rail over the months and now years that this process has been ongoing. We've already suggested that we accept that there are deficiencies on the part of the East West Rail Company in terms of their proposal. But it is a nationally significant infrastructure project. We are only consultees, but we have made strong representations all the way along the line to try and minimise the impact of this development on our residents.
Thank you. If I could just add, you know, we've had some really uncomfortable meetings you know, with East West Rail, both from a member and a very senior officer point of view, where, you know, they have not gone away at all happy, because we've been representing the sort of views that we've heard today. And they knew all along that this line being diesel was a complete red line to us, as much as we can have a red line. We continue to challenge them on net gain, which is, you know, still absolutely lacks ambition. So we're continuing those conversations. And, you know, the thing is that a lot of these conversations have to go on, you know, face to face and not immediately in the public eye. But actually, I think we've achieved a lot. You know, when you think of those great big embankments and some of the proposals in the original design, you know, there's been a lot of gains, and it's far from perfect, but there have been considerable gains made on what was originally proposed, which, you know, we absolutely did say was an awful long way from good enough. On the subject of timing, you know, people have been living under the uncertainty of East West Rail for 10 years, is it more? Looking at Councillor Williams, who knows? You know, it is imperative that it cracks on and happens, because living with uncertainty is not good for anybody. And, you know, particularly if they want to sort of sell their house or move or make plans for the future, you know, people need to know and deserve to know what's happening in the future. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to bring in Councillor Michael Atkins, if there's nobody else in the room. Councillor Atkins, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Leader. Two questions, if I may. The first of which on the different but not unrelated topic of the C2C busway. I understand the Department for Transport recently finished a consultation period for the Transport and Works Act order for the C2C busway. I'm led to believe that members of Cabinet reviewed the Council's submission to this last week, but it couldn't come to this meeting because of the very tight deadline the DFT set. But this is the kind of first opportunity to discuss this in public. First, can you reassure my residents that their concerns about the environmental damage of C2C are fully reflected in the Council's submission, particularly but not exclusively the damage to the historic Coton Orchard? And secondly, do you share their concerns that lower cost and lower impact alternatives, such as on-road bus lanes, have been prematurely discounted for some sections of the route? Thank you.
Thank you. So when we're kind of off the subject of East West Rail. Councillor Milnes?
Yeah. So I think because we're straying off today's topic, Councillor, I think if you wouldn't mind, I'd prefer to give you a written response to the question on C2C. So we'll carry on. I think you've got another question for us.
Yes, if as well as your written response, if it's possible to publish the what the council submitted to the DFT as part of that consultation, that would also be very much appreciated. So yeah, so as you suggest, returning to East West Rail, I would like to thank officers for the work that they've put into this report. At every stage that East West Rail has gone through, my sense is that the scoring and attractiveness and viability of alternative route alignments has improved relative to the preferred route that they've kind of kept going with. And I was interested to note Councillor Hawkins now reporting that some East West Rail staff think that alternative routes might now actually be superior. We also now see an outline, at least, of the engineering impacts of the chosen route alignment, which are extensive, and the implications not only for the cost of the project, but the disruptiveness of East West Rail for our residents. So I and a lot of the residents that I represent think there's a significant risk that the Westminster Government and East West Rail Co have more or less chosen the wrong route. And I'm really strongly struck by parallels with High Speed 2, where an early and inadvisable route choice through the Chiltern Hills, combined with very poor public engagement, led to huge opposition, cost overruns, and I think we can safely say the ultimate failure from a public perspective of the High Speed 2 project. don't necessarily want to draw those parallels too closely, but you know, the longer you look at it, you know, they do it does start to kind of hove in. So my question is, do the leader in cabinet agree that there's a risk that the wrong route alignment has been chosen, and what can we do and what can my residents do to influence East West Rail on this matter? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we should see this in context of the development consent order that is the ultimate test of the proposals, including aspects of the business case and so on, that has been challenged in frequently in public. There is clearly a question of the route, for example, that we still have strong advocates for a northern route, but that is largely off the table as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware. But that will be tested in the process. I think we can bring in Stephen Kelly to answer some of those technical issues. But we as a council really have to deal with what we've got in front of us, which is clearly a route that is destined to arrive in Cambridge by Cambridge South and service the CBC site. So I think that needs to be taken into to account in our considerations, and indeed is reflected in the consultation response that we've put together. And I just should echo our thanks to the officers involved for doing that work in a very comprehensive way, and it still on goes until we get the final proposed response before the consultation period ends. I think otherwise, I'm listening to what you and all of the residents that have been in correspondence with us at public meetings, and I think our response deals with all of those issues really quite comprehensively. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Atkins. Can I ask Mr. Stephen Kelly to come and pick up some of the points that have been made this morning? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there are.
There are a number of.
Somebody got a microphone on. Thank you. Yes, in respect to the points that have been raised, clearly at this stage of the process, as has been made, the point has been made, it's an informal consultation. So it's not part of the statutory process that will begin, we understand, later in the year. I think as officers, we probably share some of the frustrations that communities and members have felt in terms of the flow and the quantum of information and the level of detail at times that's been provided to allow us to assess on your behalf what we think the key issues are. The schedule that you will see with the attached report therefore reflects, rather than the definitive position on this project, noting the suggestion of objecting or not objecting, but a summation of what we consider to be the still unanswered questions and the outstanding matters to be addressed, in order for you as a council to form a definitive position in time for the statutory consultation that will precede the East West Rail process. So hopefully you can see and members can see echoed in the table and the comments that we've made the concerns that we've heard directly, the concerns that have been made to yourselves, that will allow us to deepen the engagement with East West Rail. So around things like first and last mile, which Councillor Hawkins mentioned, there are a number of points that we've made on door-to-door connectivity. I think they were using a slightly different term. Likewise, in respect of the very significant concerns that have been expressed around the fragmentation of communities, we expect to work with the Combined Authority, with the County Council's Highway Authority, Combined Authority obviously as the Transport Authority, in trying to mitigate or understand the potential mitigations and indeed the choices and the options that have been put forward for those mitigations and their effectiveness. So this is very much a schedule of engagement points, a series of agenda items that we expect to raise on your behalf with East West Rail, rather than a definitive conclusion on the merits of the project, which of course we're not, district councils are not the decision makers for. Our role is to provide the independent inspectors for the Secretary of State on this project with the local assessment of impacts on our communities and on our place. The strategic business case and matters relating to it are issues for the examination process and the independent inspectors to challenge with the representations that not only this council but all of the communities and individuals will make. So it's I think we've aimed to try and capture as comprehensively as we can what we have heard, what we believe through working with the county and with partner councils are the key issues. But we expect, and we're seeking much richer engagement between East West Rail and ourselves to be able to explore for you what those issues mean when it gets to the final scheme and the final statutory consultation.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, if there's nothing else, we will move to the recommendation, which is on page 17 of your agenda pack. So, do members agree with the proposal?
Agreed.
Anyone voting against? Anyone abstaining? Thank you. So Cabinet therefore agrees the proposals. So moving on now to item 7, which is the Greater Cambridge Local Development Scheme, which translates as the local plan timetable. So Councillor Toomey Hawkins is going to introduce this, and I think Councillor Brian Milnes is going to second it. So over to you, Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Leader. I'll try and keep this as brief as I can. As we know, the local plan timetable gives the details of the timings that local authorities will produce their new or revised local plans. We actually originally set out the current one back in 2022, but have since updated in March and November 2024 because of circumstances that are beyond our control. And then, of course, December last year, the new government instructed all local authorities to update their timetables within 12 weeks. Talk about giving us not a lot of time, but anyway. But then again, this is against the backdrop of the government changing the cut-off date for submitting local plans, using the current plan methodology. So here we go again. Now, the reason we had to update was because we had issues with a number of factors, water availability being one of them. But now there's the government's water scarcity group, the Environment Agency, Cambridge Water, who are all responsible for this, not us, dealing with these issues. The transport strategy, that's another challenge that we've had to deal with, but of course, the GCP and the combined authority are the ones dealing with it. They have plans in place coming forward. The AAP for the Northeast Cambridge, we did prepare a submission version, but then we've had to wait for the decision on the relocation of the Cambridge wastewater treatment plant. We just heard yesterday that this has now been delayed again till April 2025. I'm not sure what this government is thinking, but I think I will probably bring in Stephen Kelly later on to talk to us about what the implications of that might be or not. Of course, Cambridge 2050, that's still going on. Another thing that's not within our control. East West Rail, we've talked about. Local government reform, who knows? But in short, we now have a timetable which says that autumn winter of this year, the draft plan consultation, Reg 18, will prepare that. And by summer, autumn of 2026, we should have a submission plan, the Reg 19 version, ready to submit by the winter of, i.e. by December 2026. So that's the plan, or the timetable rather. Again, you know, we're having to do a lot of work outside of business as usual because we've got all these issues we're dealing with. So, you know, thank you to Stephen and team. And you know, I've got the team supporting me here. It's Caroline sitting there as well, and you know the others. So thank you. But I think I'll bring in Stephen to tell us more about what the implications might be for the new date for the DCO decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please, Stephen.
Thank you. Yes, we heard yesterday that the decision on the wastewater treatment works application to relocate, which of course unlocks a significant brownfield site at northeast Cambridge, where the wastewater treatment work is currently located, but indeed the land around it has been extended, the period when we expect to get a response. That does, we had made some assumptions in the local plan timetable that we've put in front of you today, that there will be certainty on a number of those matters. The water supply for Greater Cambridge, which we're working with the Water Scarcity Group on, and the relocation of water treatment works. The importance of the decision on that is clearly we have assumed that some of the housing need that we have identified in the local plan will be made up by the redevelopment of that site, and indeed from an infrastructure perspective, the treatment of water beaches, Newtown's waste will be accommodated by that new facility. The delay in a decision on that means that we will proceed on the assumption that a decision will be made, and an expectation in line with the council's submission to the process that the water treatment work will be relocated. But of course, the statutory process of submitting a plan for consultation in the autumn this year, if that site is no longer available for Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire District Councils to meet that housing need, we will need to review alternative locations for how that need will be met, and to do so in a way that meets this consultation timeline is going to prove very challenging. The government have made clear that the December 2026 submission date for what is the Regulation 22 plan, which is the plan that we need to consult upon, is fixed. And so when one factors in consultation requirements and the local government election timetable and the understandable needs to respect the pre-election period, it puts some pressure on the team and on the delivery of the plan. But we'll continue on the basis that we're expecting a decision on that scheme to realise brownfield development. It is a highly sustainable location and consistent with the NPPF in our view. But that is something that we will need to keep under review, and as the report makes clear, we'll need to update you as soon as we can on any implications falling out from that.
Thank you, Stephen. That's extremely helpful. Are there any questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Richard Williams.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. I just had two questions. Firstly, just something Mr. Kelly just mentioned. I know it's not directly within the control of the timetable, but not necessarily in control of the council. But you mentioned possibly a review of, I take it, sites for development if national policy goes that way. So there's been some suggestion of a greenbelt review. So do you think that is likely? Is there likely to be a Greenbelt review as part of that, and what impact would that, if it had to happen, what impact would that have on this timetable? Just one other question as well, and this is more of a question for the leader than the cabinet member. Again, going back to that open letter on the 9th of January, the open letter talked about, again, signed by the leader, that the signatories to the letter were aligned in their collective purpose of what they believe Greater Cambridge can do for Britain, what it will require from all of us, and what we need as a city, first, to invest in homes with a new development corporation. So is it the policy of at least the leader or this council now to support a development corporation, which is what that letter seems to say, and how that letter's been interpreted in the press? And obviously that's quite significant in terms of what we're actually planning for in terms of our own local plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, do you want to take the Greenbelt issue first?
Thank you. Yes, we would only expect to need to identify significant numbers of additional new sites if North East Cambridge doesn't come forward. The spatial strategy that we've articulated in the first proposals and indeed referenced in the update report that we took in early 2024, I think, where we identified, for example, the biomedical campus and Cambridge East and North East Cambridge as key planks of that strategy. Subject to the DCO being confirmed, we don't think that it prompts effectively automatically a significant Greenbelt review. We clearly, the NPPF that was published in December clearly highlights the issue of grey belt, or the concept of grey belt that has emerged, and we do need to review all of the evidence that we've prepared to this point in order to ensure that it meets the requirements of the NPPF. So I can't say for certain that we don't need to sense check against the Greenbelt conclusions that our previous study was, and there are, as you know, a number of site proposals for the Cambridge Greenbelt that have been advanced through the local plan process. But on the presumption that the DCO is confirmed, we are not currently anticipating the need for Greenbelt releases to meet the identified housing needs beyond those that we've previously highlighted.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so on the subject of development corporations. So prior to the general election, Michael Gove made it very clear that as part of his ambitions for an extra 250,000 houses in Greater Cambridge, that development corporations were the way to go. Because we're not delivering an extra 250,000 houses within our local plan because there isn't the evidence to support it. The Labour government have picked up the baton of that. I don't think they're talking about 250,000 houses as Michael Gove was. I think that's down to about 150,000, which is still questionable whether that is deliverable in, well, what time frame is it deliverable in? So this government, like the last government, have made it very clear that they believe that development corporations are the way to deliver growth of that scale outside of local plans. So what can we do? I can say, over my dead body, I'm not playing, I'm not going to be part of it, and then stuff just gets done to us. Or I can agree to stay around the table, try to influence what sort of development corporation it is, and we've had a huge amount of advice from Stephen Kelly, who is somewhat of an expert on this subject, on the different models of development corporation, and it may be that this government comes up with a different model, but the preferred option at the moment is locally led, so that our voice is strong in that. And if I just say, it's a red line, I'm not doing it, then South Cambridgeshire does not get properly represented. So it is better to try and stay around the table and influence what sort of development corporation we end up with, which we are undoubtedly going to, and then be around the table in order to make sure that, going back to East West Rail, there is a strong voice for our residents, a strong voice for business. So I think it's about being realistic and pragmatic, that this is definitely coming down the line, and it would have come down the line if the last government had remained in power. And, you know, our job is to focus on our residents and our businesses and be in those conversations with ministers to make sure that there is benefit and as little damage as possible. Thank you. Thank you. Righty. Oh, sorry, we've got Councillor Heather Williams online with a question now. So, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Leader. I did try to say something on East West Rail, but it crashed midway through. But if I could just say, Leader, in response to Councillor Hawkins' comments, I hope that she knows that she'll have full support, that no abuse of any councillor is acceptable, and that we completely support the administration with any efforts to stop that. Going back to this subject, Leader, in response to this question, in response to your answer just given, does the leader accept that appeasement is not always the way to deal with things? And actually, if you're going to sit around a table with something that does not sit well for many residents, that it's very important to be clear of your red lines. And will the leader be giving us the red lines of which she will not accept of things when representing the district council? Or will this be like some of the other things where we just get 1 or 2 pages of, to be quite frank, nonsense, and we have no idea what's been said and how we're being represented? Or will the leader actually be transparent about how she's representing us at the table, as she puts it?
So if you are are you talking about at this this advisory body that's being set up by Peter Freeman? Are you talking about being completely open at when those meetings have started? We've had one so far. Is that what you're talking about?
So it's in response to your answer, Leader, where you said you want to be at the table, and that's fair enough.
Yeah.
But when you're at that table, how will we know what you're saying? And how will we know what your red lines and what you're actually saying no to? Because at the moment, given the letter and the way that you have wrote that letter, it feels like it's carte blanche and come build what you like. And I'm pretty sure that's not what residents want.
Okay. I don't recognise what you say about appeasement. But in the world of politics, you know, cooperation is what gets results. And, you know, South Cambridgeshire regularly sticks its head above the parapet, and I don't think anybody could accuse us of fostering a culture of appeasement. I think we have a culture of challenge, but, you know, we do have to work with neighbouring councils, we do have to work with government, directly with ministers, with the mayor, all sorts of other people. So the way we get what is best for our residents and our businesses, and we are able to be the strongest voice for them, is by cooperating. In relation to the advisory body being set up for the Cambridge Growth Company, I believe that we have agreed that the agendas and the minutes will be public, and so, you know, we can, so there'll be opportunities, you know, for me and colleagues to be questioned on the detail of that. Okay. Do you want... Okay, so thank you, Liz. So we are going to do exactly the same that we've done with the GCP, the Combined Authority and the Pan-Regional Partnership, which is still hanging on just, and make sure there is a standing item to full council meetings so that, you know, we can share as much as we can with all members. And, you know, I'm always happy, Councillor Williams, to talk to you. You know where I am. Just pick up the phone. I'll, you know, do my utmost. In fact, I was talking to another leader, a Conservative leader, earlier today on that very subject. So always happy to share whatever I can. Thank you. Righty-ho. So moving on now. It's quite a wide-ranging debate. So the recommendations are set out on page 67. Do members agree with proposals?
Agree.
Anyone wish to vote against? And anyone wish to abstain? Okay, so Cabinet therefore agrees the proposals. Thank you. So moving on to the last item on today's agenda, just get my papers up, which is the motion that was referred to Council and, from Council to Cabinet. And Councillor John Williams is going to introduce this and I will be seconding it. So Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Leader. I can assure you that, as the Leader knows, Cabinet have looked at this motion and that we are satisfied that what this motion is asking us to do in the first 3 points already exists, and in the last point, 4, would cause us difficulties when we come to ask staff to work more than their contracted 37 hours. So taking the first 3 points in a bit more detail, we already have a contract with staff which stipulates that staff should not be taking other work that is in conflict of interest with this council. That was in place, that's been in place before the 4-day week started and continues to be in place. And therefore, obviously, we have to rely on the honesty of staff to tell us and to seek permission for second jobs, but so far as we're concerned, that there is already a system in place and supported by a contract of employment to deal with point 1. On point 2, it's always been the case that staff should not be carrying out their second jobs during the time when they should be working for the council, and that applies to their non-working day as well as their working days. So it's still the case that on a non-working day, an employee should not be working a second job while they are would have been working for the council. So again, 2 is covered by existing rules. And then on the 3rd point, we ask and expect our staff to tell us, obviously, when they have second jobs, and we keep a register of that. So again, the 3rd point is already in place, has been in place before the 4-day week started, and continues to be in place before today. On 4, as I say, although staff work 32.5 hours on 4 days, they continue to be contracted to work 37 hours. But sometimes staff have to do more than that. Particularly, for example, when we are organising the council tax bills, we ask our finance colleagues to come in at weekends to do that. Takes them over their 37 hours and they get overtime for that because they work more than their contractual hours. This, to do what is says here, would actually make that rather difficult because technically they would be selling their services back to the council. So we've been advised that we couldn't do 4 anyway. So as I say, we have looked at the 4 points that we've been asked to consider, but we feel that there is no action necessary because what this motion is asking us to do basically already exists. It existed before the 4-day week started and continues to be in place. So therefore, I would ask that we just note this and take it no further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Are there any questions from Cabinet members? No. Any other questions? Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Leader. I think you might have been told this, but Councillor Lentell has provided me with a statement which he's asked me to read on his behalf, if that's acceptable.
That's fine.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a statement from Councillor Lentel, who was the proposer of the motion. The 5 days paid for 4 days' worked permit trial has been running at our council for 2 years. This has been allowed to happen with no debate and no vote by all of us. All of us councillors are elected to represent our residents, whether they vote for us as individuals or not. 4 in 7 working, Councillor Lentel says, is a good thing. 4 in 7 working comes in many different models and varieties. The Reykjavik model of 5 days paid for 4 days worked is probably, the model least suited to a responsible local council tasked with delivering 1, value for money, and 2, socially inclusive policy making. The Reykjavik model worked in Iceland because the whole economy, public and private, undertook the experiment simultaneously. Want to go fast, go alone. Want to go far, go together. The imposition of 5 days paid for 4 days worked by our council senior leadership team is greatly to be regretted. Our residents are unhappy. They can see that delivering value for money has not been the core to the planning in this process. They can see the better targeted use of alternative 4 in 7 working models was not considered, with the result that our residents feel left out, excluded, unseen and unheard. The Leader of the Opposition has publicly called for a public referendum on this issue, and I entirely agree with her statement and intentions. Having determinately denied the people's representatives any kind of meaningful say in this project, our council senior leadership team cannot now expect the public to be fobbed off with yet another skewed consultation. The Health and Wellbeing Report, especially the bar charts on page 20, presented at our council full meeting on the 18th of July, rather tend to confirm me in my view that this project should have been targeted rather than a blanket intervention. It is one of the points that I, having 10 years lived work experience of 4 in 7 working, would have recommended from the start. 4 in 7 working models create new, not insurmountable challenges for employers. These challenges, not least of which is to prevent moonlighting on the company's dime, have gone unconsidered by us for too long. When the Leader and her cabinet come to the motion discussed at our last full council meeting in 2024, she and they must urgently demonstrate their comprehension of the size and scale of public dissatisfaction amongst those who we are all elected to represent. The cabinet, and especially the current Leader, must take full and total responsibility for the political decision not to properly debate 5 days paid for 4 days worked at the council, and they must present serious answers to the serious questions raised by the motion. Public trust has been lost. The first step on the path to recovery is to maintain an old and cherished standard. No officer, however senior, can be held responsible for a political decision, however bad. For this most basic of reasons, it is time for the Leader to take political responsibility for this political mess and resign without further delay.
So he got you to read that, did he? Rather than coming and doing it himself. Okay. Right. Righty-ho.
Richard, you got your mic on.
Okay. So, we are fortunate in this country to live in a democracy. And come the elections, people will be able to make their views clear about whether they agree with us that South Cambridgeshire is an outstandingly well-run council delivering outstanding services to all of its residents. And that's the joy of democracy. Councillor Lentel can't say in one sentence that we haven't debated it and then refer to the debates we've had about it. He's absolutely contradicting himself. We've had a lot of debates about this. I think to talk about moonlighting is deeply offensive to our staff, deeply offensive. And I will be thinking what to do with that comment, quite honestly. We are about to launch a consultation, and the consultation document will be debated at length, I am sure, at Scrutiny and Overview in a very few days. My view is, from speaking to numerous people in South Cambridgeshire, that they care about their services and the quality of their service. They don't care which council's delivering those services, and I don't think they care about whether they're delivered by people working full-time, part-time, compressed hours, in the office, from home, or from companies who've been subcontracted to deliver those services. What people care about is that their bins are collected, their council tax bills arrive, their planning permission is given, their license for their local restaurants is given, that they are safe places to eat, and all those things. You know, most people aren't aware of the fact that we have been trialling a four-day week here. But, you know, we will be running a consultation, and everybody will have the opportunity to say what they say. And at the end of the day, come the next elections, you know, that's when the final say happens. And I trust the intelligent, well-informed people of South Cambridgeshire to make those decisions based on the services that they receive. So that's my response. And Councillor Heather Williams now, please. I'm sorry, Heather Williams, sorry, I've just, Councillor, if you would, could I just delay you slightly, because I've had a Cabinet member interject, and I just need to take a question from the Cabinet, and then I'll defer to you. My apologies. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Leader. I think it's interesting that Councillor Dr. Richard Williams has read this on behalf of Councillor Lentel. And what that actually says to me is, can I ask the question, is this the view of the Conservative group? Thank you.
Well, it might be an opportune that Councillor Heather Williams might like to respond to that.
Point of personal information on that one, Chair,
okay,
if possible. I was the seconder of this motion. Councillor Lentel was not able to attend. That's perfectly reasonable for Councillor Lentel to make the statement. He asked me to read it. He'd actually asked the leader to read it, but I understand the leader refused. So I'm reading it on his behalf, and it's the seconder of his motion. I think that's perfectly fair. I wouldn't mind making a few comments of my own, if possible, after Councillor Heather Williams, if the leader will indulge me.
You're welcome. Let's go ahead, and then I'll bring in Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to make a few comments from my own. There is real concern amongst residents about this, and I think it is. I think the council needs to be honest about the fact of the implications of paying people 5 days work pay for 4 days work. It is perfectly rational and perfectly reasonable for officers to use that extra day to earn more money, because if people are perfectly willing to work for 5 days and their employer's only prepared to require them to work for 4 but is paying them for 5, it's perfectly rational for the officers, some of them, to take extra jobs. I don't blame the officers at all. It's perfectly rational economic behaviour. Whether it's perfectly rational policy for a council is another point, and that is the serious concern that residents have got. It's not about what the officers are doing. The officers are behaving, I think, in a perfectly, as I say, reasonable and rational way. It is the flawed policy we have here. It is a fantastical policy to believe that you can pay people for 5 days pay just for 4 days work, and that they're just going to sit around gardening for the final day. People will do what people do. And I don't think it's responsible for the council to have introduced this with no consultation at all up until this point. And I would note again that the consultation the council has now launched doesn't ask a direct question. It doesn't actually ask people, do you support this?
I think we're deviating from the subject matter now. That's going to be debated in scrutiny and overview, Councillor Williams. Thank you very much. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of things before I put my question. One of which, I'm attending online today because I have other commitments. Many of us are juggling work or social responsibilities. So I don't think it is fair for us to speculate as to why a member is not in attendance today. And I would ask members to reflect on that. Whatever party they are, whoever they are, I don't think that was appropriate challenge. Secondly, the leader said about debate and not having been had. But actually, it's been very clear and quite brutally at times enforced that we cannot debate the 4-day week. We've only been allowed to debate the best value notice, or will come up the consultation document. There hasn't actually been a debate by full council of the 4-day week. So I think that's important to just be really clear on, because we have been arguing for a debate and been told it's not our turn yet. We've had to wait years. In response to the actual motion itself and how it come about, I do have one, what I think is a pertinent question, is when we actually look at the question itself, which was figure 17 of the report, which sort of sparked this whole debate off. It said, which activity have you spent the most time on during your extra day/time off per week? So this wasn't a case of what you do with your free time in general. This was a questions specifically about that extra day/time off. And we had 16% of people say other paid work. Now, Councillor John Williams has said quite rightly that the contracts are still 37 hours. And I know I was personally given assurances that if people were needed in their contracted hours, they could be brought back in case we had, you know, a situation like COVID or whatever it might be, flooding issues, etc. Now, if people, and as Councillor Richard Williams says, you know, this is natural behaviour, given that the real problem is not work-life benefit, it is the pay scales and what we pay people, are working and have obligations elsewhere, surely that is a breach of all of the safeguards that Councillor John Williams has referred to. So my question is, in light of the scale of the problem, in light of that very specific question which triggered all this, these processes, does the leader think are adequate, robust, or for a 4-day working week of the style they've done, or is this simply a complete and utter failure of the project?
I'm going to bring in Councillor Williams, but I would just like to say, I seem to spend half my life debating the 4-day week recently, and it did go to the July Council, where it was debated for a considerable amount of time. So it's just not true, I'm afraid to say, it's not been debated. But for the specifics of your question, I'll bring in Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Lee. Just to start on this specific point about staff working on their non-working day, as I said, they are expected not to do their second job when they would otherwise have been working for the council. Now, all those employees who responded to the survey have been interviewed, and all the second jobs they were doing before the 4-day week started. So they were doing their second jobs on a day they were working on. So they were not doing their second job during the time when they were working for the council. And that still applies even though it is a non-working day. So there's a complete red herring being brought up by the opposition. And they know that because we've told them so many times that these posts, these second jobs were being done before the 4-day week started. So these second jobs are being done outside of the council's normal working day, even though the employees aren't working on that day because it's their non-working day. Second point, someone mentioned about value for money. Now, again, the leader of the opposition, because she's just mentioned this, we were served with a best value notice, not once, but twice. And you would have thought that if we weren't delivering best value for money, the then last government, who were very hostile towards us and the 4-day week, if they'd found something and we weren't delivering best value, they would have taken action. The fact is that they didn't. They didn't take action on the first best value notice. They didn't take action when we got served with the second best value. The reason is because they couldn't find any evidence that we were not delivering best value for this council. And it's no wonder, because if you look at the 4-day week and what's happened, is that we've actually saved money because we've not been employing agency staff. We have now got all those very hard to fill posts are now filled by full-time employees, giving us a better service than we did before. And in fact, in some areas, 22 out of the 24 KPIs that were looked at, half of them, actually, there was an improvement in our service, and the other half, there was no difference. And the two that fell aside were things that weren't directly affected by the 4-day week anyway. So to suggest that the 4-day week has actually delivered a poorer service for this council flies in the face of all the evidence that is out there. It's on our website because we had to provide the government with heaps of evidence, and they couldn't even find, despite all that, that we weren't delivering the best value for our residents. So again, another complete red herring by the opposition, and they know that because they know the facts as well as we do. So I do find it very frustrating that we keep getting the same arguments, the same attack, time and time again, which just flies in the face of the facts. And the facts are that the 4-day week has brought about an improvement in productivity and has delivered better services for this council. And, you know, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move us on. I think we've talked about this enough. We were asked to discuss the motion, and the recommendation is that Cabinet note the motion and take no further action. Do members agree with the proposal?
Agree.
Anyone wish to vote against? Anyone wish to abstain? So Cabinet therefore agrees the proposals. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. The next Cabinet meeting is on the 4th of February. Thank you all very much for your time, officers and members. Thank you very much indeed.